Um, Recording now lets you know this is the Advanced Toastmasters online club for advanced Toastmasters who are maverick leaders wanting to make an impact in the world, non-traditionally or unconventionally or just outside of the box. So welcome, welcome everyone. And my name is Dawn Nocera, and I'm your presiding officer, acting president. And today, we're going to get started by introducing everyone with a quick mic check, and I'll just go through, ask you to introduce yourself, state maybe where you're from, and then just say back to you, Madam President, and then I'll just continue the introductions if we can go on there, and I will start with you, Pamelah Landers. You're the first on my screen.
I'm Pamelah Landers from Palm Springs. Back to you, Madam President.
Thank you, Pamelah. And next on my screen is Tricia G. Tricia, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tricia G from Pennsylvania. Back to you, Madam President.
Thanks, Tricia. And next is Doug. Doug, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Doug Thiessen from Cleveland, Ohio. I'll be the Toastmaster for today. Back to you, Madam President.
Thank you. And next on my screen, I see Aaron. Aaron, can you introduce yourself and tell us where you're from?
Oh, hi, my name is Aaron. I'm a Toastaholic, and I'm from Hong Kong. Back to you, Ms. President.
Thanks, Aaron. And Andrea, you're next up on my screen.
Hi, I'm Singer from Palm Springs.
The other Andrea. Adrienne, how about you? Where are you from?
I'm sorry, I thought it wrong again, so no problem. Hi, I'm Adrienne from Miami. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Adrienne. And Jim, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Jim Adams from Lexington, Kentucky. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thanks. And Sarah. Sarah, can you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from.
Sure. My name is Sarah Lee. I am currently in Hong Kong. So back to you, Madam President.
Nice. Welcome. And is there anyone that I missed?
Thank you.
Don't think so. So at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our Toastmaster of the day, Doug Thiessen. And please help me welcome Doug Thiessen, our Toastmaster.
Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters. Sorry, I had a little problem with my unmute button, but it's working now. Welcome to the January 31st meeting of our Advanced Toastmaster Club. For this meeting, I chose a theme of road trips because over the past weekend, I did take a road trip. We drove, a round trip was almost 1,000 miles. It was over 900 miles. My wife and I went on a trip to Albany, New York for a convention, which was very exciting. So I just thought, your thoughts on trips you've taken could be very interesting. Now, we have two speakers for today. We have our first speaker is Sarah Lee, and then our second speaker will be Jim Adams. But first, we need to have a few people tell us about their roles. So I would like to call upon Andrea Sanger to tell us about her role as grammarian and awe counter. Please welcome Andrea.
Well, it's morning for me, so first off, good morning to everyone. I am today going to be the awe counter and grammarian. I do not have a word for the day, so you don't have to worry about trying to come up with something in your speech. I will be counting your ahs and ums and other things that you use as spellers today and looking for how you use the English language well. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next, I'd like to call upon our timer for today, which is our club president, Dawn, who has more than one role, as we'll see. Please welcome Dawn Nacera.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. And today I will be your timer. I will show the green when you are at the first part of your speech, yellow, and then the red, and I'll show you times later. I'm also going to put in the chat box green, yellow, and red if you're the speaker, so that way you'll know, so we don't have to spotlight me. So look for the chat, make sure I'm in the screen when you are speaking. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Dawn. I think this brings us to the prepared speech portion of today. We have two speakers, as I said. Our first speaker is a guest. She's actually attending from Hong Kong, where she is a psychology and literature teacher. And she's going to be giving project number 6 from the Competent Communicator Manual, which is vocal variety. And so her objectives are going to be using voice, volume, pitch, rate, quality to reflect and add meaning to the message, using pauses to enhance the message, and generally using vocal variety smoothly and naturally. So to present her speech called The Duality, please welcome Sarah Lee.
All right, thank you. Do I start as soon as I start speaking? Okay, so I'm actually what you would call a TCK, a third culture kid. So I've grown up a third of my life in 3 different countries. And when I was 4, I was born in South Korea, and I was moved abruptly to Germany. And I had to learn German and English simultaneously while I was growing up from the ages of 4 till about 14. And as I navigated through the different languages, through international school, through my social settings, through my family, I realized that there was a very distinct way of thinking that I had when I thought in each different language. And I'll talk more about this later when I talk about the psychology of language. But when I was undergoing it in my life, I didn't realize that this duality existed, and there was a certain phenomenon that one could attribute to it. So the best way to explain it is when I spoke Korean to my parents at home during the summer vacations, I would feel a younger sense of self. So I would speak in a very higher pitch, and there was a childish, more innocent sense of self that I had. And then when I would go back to school during the fall times, I would have a huskier voice, the one that you're hearing currently, which is what I had attributed to my English learning. So I believe in hindsight that when I went back to school, there was more academic nature to it, which is why I developed a huskier, more serious tone. Whereas with my family, I could retain that sense of innocence and that childlike mindset that allowed me to speak with a higher pitched voice. So as I grew older, and then with German, of course, German was different. German was a language that I spoke with my friends, and it was something in the middle, something high pitch, something modulated. But as I went to university in the US, I realized that my husky voice remained the same. And then whenever my parents would call me from Korea, my friends would immediately notice that I would speak very, very high, and I would speak like a child. And they would often ask me, why do you sound so different in Korean? So as I grew older and as I majored in psychology, I realized that there was a linguistic theory to this. Benjamin Whorf was the psychologist who came up with this theory that you think in a different language, and the language that you think in gives you a different sense of self. And this was, of course, debunked later on because there was a problem with causation versus correlation. The truth of the matter is, you are not really embodying the age, or you're not a different person or a sense of self when you're speaking one language. It is rather the the environment that you surround yourself in, and the people that you interact with, and the words that you may be using that alter and shape the way that your voice and your tone and your language will change. So of course, when I'm speaking Korean to my parents and my family, I'm not using curse words or slang words. And when I'm speaking English, I'm usually in an academic setting or I'm teaching to my students. So that's why I have that more serious husky voice. So with learning psychology and understanding why I have this different sense of self, what I've ultimately ended up doing is to have somewhat of a husky monotone voice. And what usually happens is people think that I am not very enthused or excited about most things, which is not often the case. But believe me, I am enthused. I just show it in different ways through my body language and hopefully with a sparkle in my eye and the smile on my face. But I have been told that if people hear me on the phone, they think I'm a very serious person because I've adapted this very husky voice. So yeah, over time, just something that I've learned, and with the help of psychology, something that I've been able to have even more insight into. And may I ask how many minutes I have? Okay. So, and what I've learned as well as a teacher in psychology and literature in Asia is that a lot of parents treat me a lot more differently when I speak in a huskier voice. So they think that I'm older. I know that I have a very youthful look. I'm 32 actually. So what the feedback that I've gotten is that a huskier voice suits me better. That it suits me to the point where it acclimates with what I do professionally, and it gives me a sense of more authority. And although I have taught in Korea, and my Korean language makes me have that higher pitched, higher tone voice, my husky voice has overridden all of that. And so believe me, I'm not on the verge of falling asleep right now. This is just how I speak regularly. So thank you. That is the duality of language that I've experienced.
Thank you, Sarah, for a very interesting speech to learn about, as you put it, the duality of language, particularly in your case.
Thank you.
I'd like everyone to take a minute and send some comments to Sarah in our chat box. You can private message her. Actually, no. Yeah, Sarah's in here. So we'll just do that for a minute. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for sending comments. Next, we have our second speaker, which is Jim Adams. Now, Jim is working on a project, which I have to get back to here. He's working on a project from the Advanced Manual Speeches by Management, where this is project number 5, dealing with confrontation, the adversary relationship. And his objectives are to understand the definition and nature of the adversarial relationship, prepare for an adversary confrontation on a controversial management issue, and employ appropriate preparation methods, strategy, and techniques for communicating with an adversary group as the representative of your company or corporation. So Jim's going to give a 5-minute speech, and then there's going to be 10 minutes for us to grill him on the topic which he's presented to us. So I'll read his introduction to sort of prepare us as a group. He says, the scenario for this speech is that our speaker has taken the apparently controversial position of starting a Toastmaster club that is geared toward appealing to a certain demographic of the population, a themed club. Is this discriminatory, elitist? Is it helpful? Is it something that we, the audience, can allow to happen? The hypothetical scenario is not about advanced Toastmasters online. It is about a Toastmasters club that he wants to start. There is a 10-minute Q&A after the 5-minute speech. Our collective role is to prepare probing, hostile questions, attacking the speaker, and trying to make the speaker's club he is proposing look bad. A challenging role for all parties. Please help me welcome with his speech, Progressive Proposal Problem, Jim Adams.
Thank you, everybody. This was a challenge to find one that I was confident enough in this particular venue to practice, and I'm glad I have a witting audience. I hope you can put aside your kindness and your appreciation of everybody's abilities and become more of the darker side of your souls, if you don't mind, just for the benefit of this. In fact, I would not mind even if you treated the chat room as I spoke as a place like a cafeteria at a PTA meeting where you overhear people whispering. So feel free to just throw random thoughts. If you think I'm saying something that is controversial, you can just throw not even a full sentence, maybe just, oh yeah, right, sure, eye roll, whatever you want. I want the chat room for this particular project to be open for everyone to amuse the rest of us in this venue. So let me start out by saying that I do not mean to offend anybody, but I'm coming to this particular decision to create this club from a very long history of what I've seen from a polarized group in the United States, where my club is, in Kentucky. In 2004, I started a club, or I joined a club. I didn't start the club. And it turns out, as I became a member, the person that was creating the club was doing her high-performance leadership as the Republican women's chair for the Jessamine County Democrats, where I was living. And I think that I might have ruined her big plan for this particular club, because once I got in there and was dynamic and basically doing a lot of the work with her, it did not become the vision that she thought of, which was going to be a Republican club. One year I went to Las Vegas, and looking for a club during a conference on electronics, I actually found the MGM Grand Toastmasters Club, the Lion's Roar Club, and got to go into the basement of the casino and got to walk around with all the other people that worked there, which was really cool to just be escorted into the back hallways and the dungeons of a casino, only to be met with a group of people that were members of not only that club, but a Republican club in Nevada. This was during a Tea Party phase in the United States, which was started about 8 years ago. Since then, I've become sensitive to the fact that there's a Republican club in the district that I reside in Toastmasters. And I've also noticed, by doing just simply a quick Google search and Facebook search, multiple Republican clubs that have sprung up over the years, and very many of them, compared to doing a search for, say, a progressive club, which I found only one, which no longer exists. So I first want to say that I'm not trying to do something to counter that, but I am letting everybody kind of know the basis for why I want to suggest something. It's not out of the ordinary, which is what I think a lot of people might think when they first hear that I'm trying to propose this in the area that I'm at. So I want to start out with a real quick quote that says, I know that you believe you understand what I think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. Confusing, right? Well, that's what I want to make sure as I progress with my discussion and answering your questions, that you really do understand what I'm trying to say. And I want to thank Sarah for her speech when she talked about how the linguistics and the words and the languages themselves can affect the style and approach and even the thoughts that we think. And in this particular climate in the United States right now, there is a lot of trigger words, things that would turn you off if at first you heard that initially, where you might not want to even consider or become a good listener, something that Toastmasters definitely wants to make sure that, and we all do, become better at. So the things that I know might be issues with this proposal before I take your questions is, are there, and these are unfulfilling arguments in my mind, is sharing such political points of view, are they off-putting to members? And I would say that's why we would want to have the name Progressive Toastmasters. The world is a bell curve, okay? If I gave a speech to 20 people, I know that at least 2 people are going to love what I say. I know that 2 people are going to totally hate what I say, and everybody else will be somewhere in the middle. So I know that that's just a fact of life, but by letting people know that that's what they came for, that's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Is there a precedent for doing something like I'm suggesting? And I say, as I just explained to you, that there are lots and lots of clubs that have taken an approach on party basis, but I'm not suggesting a party basis. I'm talking about a philosophy of being progressive. And there's a lot of definitions of what being progressive means, but that's the exploration that the club would be shooting for and working towards, is sharing the variety of concepts that a progressive club could share. And then finally, is it in harmony with the Toastmasters mission? And I'll just conclude by saying that I don't think there's any contradiction between talking about human rights and the science behind global climate change and providing a mutually supportive and positive learning environment. I don't think that there's any conflict between teaching about logical fallacies and propaganda versus truthful rhetoric and ethical excellence and abuse of power when you're trying to teach people about real communication and leadership skills. And then finally, it's not a mutually exclusive thing to be talking about women's rights and giving voice to minorities, which is a tenet of Robert's Rules of Order, by the way, and providing a place where you can develop self-confidence and personal growth. So that being said, I want to take your questions, and I really think this is a good idea, and I hope you accept me for who I am and the proposal that I'm making, and I'm open to whatever you'd like to ask.
Do we have to raise hands?
I would appreciate if everyone would just unmic. Let's just try and see what happens. Everybody unmic, raise your hands, everybody on the 6x6, and I'll shout out your name.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So Jim, how would you navigate the potentially sensitive topics of women's rights or immigration laws? How would you be able to respectfully discuss that in a Toastmaster setting if someone made a speech that was potentially critical or offensive or controversial?
Right. Well, the speech would not be an issue if everybody understood, as Pamelah has mentioned, that the evaluation portion of the meeting is not about the content. And this is a great learning experience for Toastmasters that may not get that. So if we were to hear someone with an opposing view, and I'm not saying this is like you don't have to have a progressive card or with you or anything, but this is the benefit of having a venue where people at least are allowed to speak that concept. I had someone approach me when I was division governor asking me if it'd be okay if she could talk about a lesbian topic. And I told her what I've been telling my club, everything is okay to talk about as long as it is tactful and respectful. And that is the balance. But I've been noticing even in my club where we tout that this is a positive thing, this is what we do, and it's taking a strange turn where you end up having to refute things that should not have to be refuted in terms of facts, parroted linguistic issues like trigger words, and it's become a problem. So it might not be the right time to do this in a regular club, but if you have a progressive club, you provide a safer environment for people to have that conversation.
And how would you prevent from it becoming too leftist or two rightists?
That's a very good
Just
question.
by modulating or
when would
moderating?
when would that manifest? Would that manifest in the evaluation? If not, it would manifest in the general evaluation, or maybe in the way table topics are responded to. That is the challenge, and I think just as like you usually have some kind of invocation, or you read the mission of the Toastmasters at the beginning, there could be a supplemental introduction to the beginning of the meeting that talks about the fairness doctrines and the openness. And I don't think the tenets of the progressive concept that I'm proposing would have those extreme reactions. But if they were, that's us catching ourselves and falling into something that is not what we stand for. If all of a sudden I start using nicknames for people or disparaging comments to prove my progressive point of view, I would hope the rest of the progressive people that are in the group would go, guess what you're doing? You are slipping. You are falling into a routine that has been normalized, and doing this in a group environment instead of just in chat rooms and Facebook posts actually is a great way to keep all of ourselves in check. Anybody else? Yes, Pamelah.
Yes,
So
I actually have.
you're wanting, I'm going to share something first, Sarah. You're wanting to do a new club that's focused on being progressive. Is that what I heard you say?
Correct.
I'm a little confused about the club purpose because there was so much before I got clarity about that. So I was just clarifying that you want to do a progressive club. What I didn't understand was the purpose of a progressive club. And so I'm highly confused about what it is that you're wanting to create, and I have no idea how to be in a relationship with it.
If I were to be so specific as to tell you why and what you are allowed to speak about, that would be contradictory to the progressive concept. So what I think I would do, based on your advice or your suggestion or your confusion, is to make sure that when we do start this club, that we better explain what the concept and philosophies of a progressive club and what we would expect to participate, and back to even Sarah's point about how to react on topics. I think what I would say is the topics need to be, or should be, welcome topics that might otherwise be considered controversial, or that the speaker might not be comfortable doing in a regular public environment, and just let us see where it goes, because we could get some crazy concepts, and that's just as much of a challenge in addressing as anything. No one's going to get kicked out because of their particular views, and that would be the rub and the challenge. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yes. So I have a question. I know that in this in this environment where everyone wants to be politically correct, I know that everyone is aware of the dangers of group polarization, where you have like-minded people come to a more extreme conclusion than they would have if they had acted as individuals. And a disastrous effect of this would be groupthink, where you have the group polarization. The members want to preserve the harmony of the group, so they actively engage in self-censorship and disallow any opposing opinions. Now, of course, the original intent may be to allow everyone to have free thought and not have too controversial topics, but eventually, aren't you afraid of groupthink occurring in such a system?
I do think that through the course of the club, because that is basically what is happening to my existing club. There was a club in Lexington, Kentucky that just recently had the president step down because of his overt political commentary and his abuse of the email system. And a lot of people quit because of that. It's the climate is requiring that this be discussed, but it is not something anyone wants to discuss. So to approach what the downside of having a club like this would be is simply to focus maybe on educational moments on logical fallacies, because I guarantee you that 50% of the stuff that might cause division that I see on the concepts that I'm thinking that we would be talking about or encouraging or letting people speak on will dissipate with understanding the tools behind understanding logic. I know that's I'm an engineer, I'm a very geeky guy, but I think what I would do is take it upon myself to have rhetorical device moments, logical fallacy types of analyses of the types of speeches. I would take this to a level where people understand what is true and what's not. Not in a controversial way, but in an educational way, because we all need to be smarter about the information that we are ingesting. That's just one part. And then lastly, maybe, I've thought about this, is once we get to that point where we have a club that's with that, we need to not just become plateaued and think, here's our little groupthink circle and here's our safe bubble and everything. It's time then to approach and share our thoughts with maybe a debate team, or maybe someone that is on the other side of, say, certain topics, and actually create a robust environment, and even something that would be something that other clubs would like to see. Once we put ourselves in check on the methods that we use to convey our information. Because right now, I think the methods that people are using in today's world, in the political, is getting really crass and full of, I keep using the word fallacies if you don't know what that is, but a lot of illogic is out there. A lot of this needs to be countered just through simple education, and the best way to educate is with the current events that we're experiencing. Anybody else?
This is Adrienne.
Yeah.
I can wait.
Okay, go ahead.
Go
ahead, Aaron. And
No, Adrienne first. No worries.
Adrienne.
Okay. My question is this: you can still discuss current events without taking a political stance, because a lot of times when I speak, especially if it's something I may or may not be in agreement with, even though I'm speaking on the topic, I won't say my personal opinion. I'll just deliver the information, because people get offended by just about anything. And I recently experienced this because I am a past corporate controller. I do like control and structure. And some people felt like we don't want to feel like we were coming to work after work. So I'm thinking that's the only reason I'm here, is to build the skill. So when you have those things that people are just trying to find an excuse, and they get offended, and then they don't want to be in the club and they stop coming, you still need the membership numbers to meet your district requirements. How do you balance that in this model?
Sometimes you got to let loose what you got to let loose, and maybe there should be some aftercare and some serious conversation with that person as to why they left. And if there's a valid reason why they left, of something that we did as a club that is not based in something that is, logical and straightforward, then it is what it is. You know how turn rate is. And lastly, go ahead, Aaron. We've got Red on the card.
It's about Red. So I actually try to ask you a question about, if I have to put into Toastmaster mission of RISE, can you give me one liner how it relates to your club, though?
If what?
Who? What?
RISE, respect, integrity, excellence, and service. How would you put that in one sentence for your club?
I will take that up. I will work on that, since we're running out of time, and I appreciate the acronym, but I think acronyms are powerful tools, and I think what you've done is given me a bright way to convey some of this information, perhaps at the beginning of our meetings. I'm all about the tool, and I'm all about the progressive concepts about global warming, environmentalism, and just basic human rights. And so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jim, for addressing a very interesting topic and allowing us to ask those questions. I think this has been a great exercise and an interesting speech. Let's take another minute to provide some feedback to Jim before we move into the table topics.
Thank you for all the comments in the chat room, by the way. That was great. I'm just now getting a chance to read back to them.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, this is just strictly for this particular speech. We do not recommend the use of the chat
for conversation during the meeting, but that's what this called for. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, we need to move on. Our schedule is a little behind here. So I would like to introduce Don Nocera, who is our table topics master, to lead us in the impromptu speaking session. And I'd also like to make sure that everybody highlights, or everyone speaking highlights Pamelah in their list of speakers, because she's going to take over the role of timer during the table topics. So everyone, please welcome Don.
Thank you, everyone. And if you're not already muted, mute yourself, and I will call on you for our table topics impromptu section for the day. I would like to call on somebody I haven't heard speaking today, and it looks like we're all speaking. So I'm going to hone in on, you know what? I want to hear from Tricia G. I'm going to call on you, and here's your question. Can you tell us about the road trip of a lifetime? Tell me about the trip or a road trip that was the most impactful for you and why.
Fellow Toastmasters, this is the most appropriate question. When I was just about to turn 40, I wanted to do something really special. So I talked to my husband and I said, I don't know where exactly I would like to go, but I would like to go to a national monument. Since I live very close to Washington, D.C., I've already done that. Where could we go? So we started researching, and I decided I wanted to go see Mount Rushmore. So my husband researched it a little bit, and no plane can actually just fly to where the Mount Rushmore is. It's very complicated you'd have to rent a car and drive for hours. So he decided we are going to drive. We drove from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania to Boulder, Colorado, or not Boulder, Colorado, but just flew out of my mind. Well, we drove across the country to see Mount Rushmore in Nevada, in South Dakota, I'm sorry. So it took us about 4 days of driving and staying in hotels, and Ohio is not my favorite state, I'm sorry. It's just corn, and more corn. My husband declared, you're never ever driving through Ohio again. In any case, we did finally get to Mount Rushmore, and it was quite a dreary, overcast day. We got to the monument, stood there approximately 5 minutes, and then we went to Custer State Park, and that was my most favorite part of that trip. It was like a safari, and we got to see buffalo and donkeys and wild sheep and huge moose and elk. I'm not sure which one they were. It might have been elk. But that was the most enjoyable, memorable road trip I've had in my life. Back to you, Table Topic Master.
Thank you, Tricia. Next for table topics, I am going to pick on Aaron. If you could unmute yourself and be prepared for this next question. So my question for you, Aaron, is tell us about your most out of the box, most unusual, most, something that you think nobody else has done, just you, road trip that you've ever been on.
Fellow Toastmasters, most distinguished guests, the most unique road trips are mostly directly to your heart. If I find a road to people's heart, that will be the most unique road trip. However, I'm not going to talk about that. That will be taking more than 2 minutes. So I'm going to talk about a trip that I went to Madagascar, a trip whereby I was trying to survive on a journey whereby I have no idea what they're talking about. So I went to South Africa, took a nice boat with a translator. That translator is not really cooperating with me. And I traveled with this gentleman over there on the risk of being eaten alive to Madagascar, whereby I was spending there 6 months in a village whereby they were fighting for resources. I could have died there. I could have become as macho as they are. If they can be a man, I can be one. So I was there to actually look at the culture-wise, and I try to understand how they're living. And I see lots of people wearing lots of tiny plates on the top to carry pots of water. And I was wondering, is this the best way to carry pots of water? I tried, but I was having a headache. So the next thing I actually encountered was to have a pole fight with people who are skilled in training of art of war. I thought I was great in pole fighting. I was beaten alive badly. Then there is a situation whereby I have to endure the ordeal to become that person to be matured by standing on a pole for 7 days and 7 nights. I can't even last for 2 hours. And after all these situations, when I find that it's a bit unique, the most experienced part is I actually tried. The experience may not mean something, but it means a lot to me and transform my life. Because I believe no one will actually bother to train themselves to go to a place whereby they're having a war and have a life audio of transformation. That's where I value life. That's where I value the simplicity of things. And when I go back to the real world, I prefer to live in my Disneyland world. Back to you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mr. Toastmaster of the day, do we have time for more, or should we just go straight into the evaluation portion of the meeting?
Looking at the clock and the agenda, I think unfortunately we need to move into the evaluations at this point.
Awesome. Thanks, and back to you.
Thank you, Dawn. I realize I should have called on our timer, Dawn, to give us the times for the speeches, and also if you time the table topics, those as well.
I will give you the times for the speeches here. Sarah was at 5 minutes and 53 seconds, and Jim Adams was at 5 minutes 54 seconds for his first part and 10 minutes and 59 seconds for the second portion of his speech. And I'll let Pamelah go to the rest.
The timing for the table topics was, Tricia was 2 minutes 15 seconds and Aaron 2 minutes 20 seconds.
Okay, thank you both. Now I'd like to introduce our general evaluator, who will be handling the evaluation portion of the meeting. So could everyone please welcome Adrienne Williams to do our general evaluation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. At this time, we will move into the evaluation portion of our meeting. I will be calling for Pamelah. She will give you the objectives of the speech, and then she will move forward to her evaluation. So our first evaluator for Sarah Lee's speech will be Pamelah Landers. May I have the timers report, please?
The timers report?
We just had the time.
How much time they have for the evaluations?
2 minutes. I will put the green up for 2, yellow up for 2.5, and red up at 3. Please have me in your screen so you can see me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, for your speech today. The purpose of your speech was vocal variety, which was to use a variety of body language and voice, pitch, volume, number of different things that you would be doing with your voice, in addition to building on the skills that you've learned in speeches 2 through 4, which have to do with organizing your speech and using all the skills that have come in the previous speeches. So you did really well with your volume. I could hear everything you were saying. It was clear. The words were clear. I could understand every single word you shared. So that part of the presentation was very easy. I didn't have to strain at all to hear anything that you were sharing. So that was really, really well done. You also have the words that you used were easy to understand. I didn't wonder what anything meant. And that was also really well done. A recommendation, there were 2 recommendations that I came up with. there wasn't much difference in the pitch. I think you could have, since you were talking about doing different languages, that you actually could have demonstrated something when you were speaking with your parents and what it was like to speak in German. I'm guessing you spoke German, to have shared, so we could have felt and had the experiences. It would have been a perfect speech to share that kind of experience, and that would have been a really good way to express vocal variety for this. The other thing is that I didn't feel like there was any organization in this speech that had an opening and a closing that matched. One of the things in speech 2 that you learn is to have an opening, have a body, and have a closing that matches the opening. And there wasn't a closing. I felt that you were a little bit unprepared because you were asking Dawn, oh, am I at the right time? So I wasn't sure that you had actually prepared the content to know about the timing and closing. I would just recommend that is a really important structure, no matter what kind of speech you're doing, to have that speech number 2 structure in your body for any kind of speech you're doing. It's really helpful. Also, there was a lot of, on the positive side, a lot of facial expression. It's hard, we're all learning. It's hard here to know how to work with the body language and what do you do, and and when you're on a phone, it looks like you're on a phone, there's even less space to do that. So I was noticing that your facial expressions were about the only body language, and there were times when I saw different facial expressions, so I appreciated seeing that in your speech. And maybe as you get more involved in doing speeches online, I don't know how much of this you've done, to be able to find some body language options. But yeah, I think you did really well in terms of getting your point across. So thank you very much. Back to you, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pamelah Landers. We'll move into our second evaluator, which will be Tricia G, and she will be evaluating Jim Adams on his speech. Tricia, at this time, could you please tell us of the objectives?
Thank you. I don't actually have the objectives other than the actual evaluation portion of the speech, which is actually interactive. So please either feel free to add in the chat, or I can call on you if you raise your hand when we get to that portion. Jim, this was very interesting coming up to us as with a potentially controversial issue. I really appreciated how at no point did you get offensive. You continued to be open and discuss the issue and present it in a way that we could understand where you were coming from, which is basically the point of this exercise. So I think you did that very well. Some things that I particularly saw myself is that you were trying to get so much information to us in that 5 minutes that you spoke extremely fast. So at times it was hard to determine exactly what you were trying to share with us. So you may want to cut the content down a little bit so you don't have to speak so rushed. As far as the evaluation portion that you had sent to me, it asked that if we thought the information that you presented was effective, and if it wasn't, why not? I thought that the information you presented was very effective. It may not have persuaded me to join a progressive group. However, I could see the merits of it if that was a passion of mine, that I could go to a like-minded club and be surrounded by people who also felt that way. Conversely, if someone joined and didn't really understand what a progressive club was, they may get offended and leave the club. But like you said, you could have systems in place. Someone can go up to that potential member and say, hey, this is just, where we're coming from. I'm sorry I didn't agree with it. and you're certainly welcome to come back and share your views. So I'd like to ask the audience as well, do you feel that Jim was effective with his controversial issue of trying to build this club exclusively for progressive-minded people?
I think that if there were measures in place for there to be like always a devil's advocate to make sure that the group doesn't go too strongly into group polarization and groupthink, then I think that, and also there's the educational factor, because there are, straw man attacks and different fallacies that a lot of people don't realize are being utilized in the American media or any kind of media. So I think that there is definitely merit if people want to be able to kind of debate these topics and not be afraid of being criticized or being too, they just want to kind of get into the deep of things. I would join.
So overall, Jim, you expressed your opinion, you presented it in an open fashion, you did not become offensive, and you wrapped it back up to the beginning and explained your overall, where you were coming from, what your plans were, and I really appreciated listening to you present this interesting, controversial subject. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Evaluator, General Evaluator.
Wow, thank you. That was awesome. I enjoyed having the variety of input. The feedback was really good to incorporate that. Overall, I thought the meeting was great. We did a great job with having variety. I thought that Jim's speech gave us something out of the box to think about. I thought it was a valid point. What I think would be great is if that club were called the debaters, then you would attract people who are going to debate, because that's what they like to do, go through the pros and cons, and that would respect and everything. So I thought that was good. As far as our evaluators, Pamela's evaluation, some of the things that you could have done better was give her an example of what the pitch or the vocal variety would have been. For example, I went up high or I went down low, or some example that would have helped her understand in her speech what she would have done differently. Because sometimes after you finish speaking and someone makes a comment, you're like, what are they referring to? So that would help if you tell them the specific part of the speech that she needed to change or work on. The second thing was you could have let her know that during the meeting, her head was cut off. That was something that if you push the camera back a little bit so we can see your full body, it would be a lot better for us to receive your message, because we're not focused on your head being cut off versus what you're actually saying. As far as Tricia, I thought that you did a great evaluation, because it is out of the box and you don't want to be offensive to people. And it is harder to find new members than just to not offend them. But I do think you did a great job of incorporating audience feedback. I thought that, of course, you're always so kind and gentle. But I did like the fact that you said, I wouldn't be joining that club. I don't like to debate, so I don't know if I would join the club. I appreciate having a debate, so I would love for our club to have a debate on a topic, and maybe this would be a good topic for us to use as a debate, so we can talk about it and actually incorporate it into the meeting. I do like the fact that because we are in the daytime, we have opportunities to really take advantage of some new issues, and that's a great thing for this club. Overall, everyone did a great job. Thank you so much for your feedback. And the only other thing that I could think of, Tricia, that you could have talked to Jim about was his fidgeting. He was fidgeting and moving around while he was speaking, and that's something that he needs to know so he can, when we watch these sessions back, we don't realize that we're fidgeting or moving around, and it makes it very difficult to focus on what the content of your speech is because we're distracted. But overall, we did a good job. Thank you so much, and back to Mr. Toastmaster.
Are you going to do an all-counter report, Adrienne?
Let me see if I know who they are.
Andrea did the all-counting.
I'm the all-counter.
Okay, may we have the reports, please, for the odd counter?
Overall, everyone did a great job. However, there was a lot of umming and ahhing, but mostly and so were the culprits today. Almost everyone used and inappropriately and so inappropriately. Starting sentences, connecting sentences with a so when they weren't supposed to be connected. This is a current cultural thing that is happening in America, so does happen. However, it doesn't make you look very professional when you're using it. The other word that we used a lot is and then the next thing. And there, instead of or we've all trained ourselves to stop using those. Instead, we're using the and the so. Jim, you had some words that some of us may not have known what they were. However, it was great to hear them. I liked it when you talked about logical rhetoric. That was a really great term to use. Everybody, you did a great job. I'm thankful that I got to listen to all the things that you had to say. Back to you, Adam, General Evaluator.
Thank you. That is a good point. I think we were all a little bit thrown off. We were a little bit uncomfortable, so we were just like stuck. But that was great. You're absolutely correct in that. And do we have a timers report, please?
Yes, we do have a timers report. Pamelah was at 3 minutes and 19 seconds, and Tricia was at 3 minutes and 36 seconds for the evaluation portion of the meeting. And back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you. And did we have a chat monitor today? I know Aaron is always connected with the chat. Did you have a report, Aaron?
All right, thank you very much. So I can actually help out. So the chat is actually mainly deal with two people. The first one is me trying to be very lively in the chat box. So I posted quite a lot of stuff which might not be relevant, but trying to stimulate the atmosphere. The other one would be the private chats, which is basically the comments and feedbacks, which is kept in private. So that will be actually out of the scope where I cannot see it. So overall, actually, the most important element will be Jim. When they actually give the speeches itself, he have requested a lot of speeches or comments. That is where by the comment box were bombarded. But then it was really on the track of that. So back to you, Adrienne.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. We appreciate everything. And if you are on a phone or a tablet, it's hard to chat. So feel free to email any feedback you have to Jim after the meeting. And now I'm going to turn everything over back to our Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you, Adrienne, for being our general evaluator and handling that portion of the meeting so well. I'm going to move straight to our president without closing comments because we only have a couple minutes. It's 12:57 by my clock, and we need to fill some roles for next week. So over to you, Madam President.
Thank you very much. And do I have we're going to go straight into filling the roles. I want to make sure my very first thing is to get a Toastmaster for next week. Do I see someone who wants to fill that role? Hands, anyone? I'm going to put it on gallery view. Toastmaster, anyone? Anyone want to be a Toastmaster for next week? As heads are looking down. Okay, I will be the Toastmaster for next week until somebody else comes in. And
I won't be able to attend next week.
What's that?
Next week I won't be here because that's my voluntary.
Yes.
Day.
Great. Thank you for reminding me, Tricia. And
would it be the same time?
This meeting is at the same time every week. So, okay. And I know it's late for you, but we loved having you here. And before I get into any more filling the roles, I would love to hear how you enjoyed our meeting, Sarah, because you are our guest this week, and you came in and spoke for us. I really appreciate that. But can you tell us how you enjoyed the meeting?
I enjoyed it a lot. I was exposed to different elements that I hadn't been before, especially playing the devil's advocate for a controversial topic. I thought that was really right up my alley, actually, because I love doing speech and debate. So, and literary devices and things like that, rhetorical fallacies. So it was very interesting to see how structured this, because I've only been to one other online Toastmasters event, and it was Australian, and it was a little bit different culturally. So I thought this was most enlightening, and I really appreciate everyone's feedback, and it's only helping me to become better. So thank you very much.
Great, welcome. And
thank you.
And I hope if you would like to join the club, go to ato.toastmost.org, if somebody can put that in the chat box. And there's a quick link to join at the top on the menu bar. And yeah, we're pre-charter,
Okay.
so we love having new members. So thank you and welcome. And I'm going to,
thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm going to officially stop recording the meeting, and we can end on time. But stick around so we can fill the meeting role. So thank you very much.